quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the North Carolina Broadcast Legends Production Fund, including contributions from the following. For a complete list of project funders, go to unctv.org/nclegends.
Welcome to North Carolina Broadcast Legends, featuring industry leaders sharing stories from the rich and significant history of the broadcasting business here in our state. I'm your host, Mike Weeks. Charles Gaddy first saw television at Elwood Long's repair shop in his hometown of Biscoe, North Carolina. He recalls listening to Edward R. Murrow on the radio with his dad, sitting on their front porch on a warm summer night. As a kid, he couldn't believe Ed Murrow was on the radio live from London while he listened from his porch in Biscoe. The idea and dream of being a broadcaster settled into Charlie's mind. After graduating from Guilford College, he went directly into the Army to serve his country. After service, Charlie came back home for a brief time and then accepted an invitation from an uncle in Washington, D.C., who'd provide room and board while he looked for a job. Got a job with the Civic Service Commission as a clerk, and he was bored. He still dreamed of being in broadcasting. So he took the phone book, looked up television stations, and started applying for jobs. During interviews at ABC, CBS, and NBC, they all asked what experience he had in broadcasting. And when he said none, but he dreamed about being a broadcaster, every station turned him down. But at NBC, they told Charlie he wasn't qualified for the job he'd applied for, but they had an opening for a job below his education and experience level as a network page. Charlie told the interviewer he'd be the best page they ever had. And that's where our story begins. From his first appearance on television as a staff announcer with NBC in 1960, Charlie Gaddy then moved back to Raleigh to work for powerhouse radio station WPTF before joining WRAL-TV, where he worked as a news anchor and senior editor for 24 years, spending more than 30 years in broadcasting. Charlie Gaddy is the recipient of the Silver Circle Award, presented by the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He's a member of the North Carolina Broadcasters Hall of Fame, and the Charlie Gaddy Center for Children was named in his honor for relentless public service efforts in support of United Cerebral Palsy in North Carolina. Charlie Gaddy, welcome to the program.
It is amazing for my imagination even to have the words, to have my name and the word legend in the same sentence. I cannot believe it. When I was driving over here, and just let me say this, when I was driving over here, I was thinking of North Carolina broadcast legends, and I thought of Woody Durham, who has just left us, and Larry Stogner, who died not long ago. Yeah. They were legends, and I wanted to recognize them right away.
Well, that's very kind of you, Charlie. Well, let's start your story because it's a very interesting one. You went to Washington, D.C., and you got a job as a page, and something happened. The union went on strike, and the network had to figure out how to run their broadcast. What happened then?
The pages were not in the union, the secretaries were not in the union, and the salespeople were not in the union. And so we young people were thrown into these jobs and actually ran the network for about 2 months.
Wow.
During which time Nikita Khrushchev came to Washington. The Emmy Awards were a live telecast from Washington and Los Angeles. I mean, it was one of the most exciting, scary, amazing times of my career.
Wow. Well, and you walked the halls with some of the giants.
Yes. David Brinkley was a superstar by that time. He and Chet Huntley had done the 1956 conventions and became the leaders in the whole industry in news. David Brinkley, Frank McGee, Willard Scott was there. The great Jim Henson, who was the modern day Walt Disney, started there at NBC. So
Wow.
we all walked in the same door.
And because of the strike, you were enlisted to help keep the network on the air, and as you had mentioned, some very interesting things. In those days, a lot of the cues and things, I know you had boards that you wrote on so that talent could see things. Tell us what happened when Nikita Khrushchev came into the studio and you were working on the floor.
I was assigned to be the assistant director for Nikita Khrushchev's major speech to the nation, originating in our studio there in Washington. And the directors were not on strike. That's what saved us. The directors were in a different union. They were not on strike. So as we prepared for the visit for Premier Khrushchev, and by the way, we asked the embassy, how do we say this man's name, this famous man? And they sent pronunciation Khrushchev. Everybody said Khrushchev, but it was actually Khrushchev. So, that's one of the things I remember. Another thing is that his Secret Service, the KGB people, security people, were all over the place. There were only 10 of us allowed in the room with him, in the studio with him. But to get to the story, in those days we had a big flow pen about the size of a big cigar, a felt pen that we would write things for the talent, hold up time cues and so forth, or special notes that they needed to wrap or whatever. And so I don't know why I'm standing right in front of Premier Khrushchev, and I reach in my jacket and reach for this pen. I don't know why, because I didn't know Russian. I couldn't have scribbled him anything. All of a sudden, I was bumped around by these, out of the darkness came these KGB people and were bumping me all around, and they thought that I was that this thing was a weapon.
Yeah.
And so they pulled the cap of it off and saw that it was nothing but a pen, and they brushed me off and scared the heck out of me.
Well, that had to be an interesting experience. First of all, you were thrown into a job to manage the network during the strike or run the network show, to be there with Khrushchev, and then to have that happen. You have another interesting story, I think, is great, and as a lot of young people getting into broadcasting, when we have an opportunity to see or speak with someone that is established in the business, we ask for advice, and that's exactly what you did one day when you ran into David Brinkley. Tell us about that.
David was always allowed young people to, we were all interested in him, and he always allowed us to be with him and talk with him in the commissary and so forth. So one day I said, Mr. Brinkley, do you have some good advice for a young fellow like me? I'd like to be in this same kind of business one day, and what advice would you have for me? And he, you know how he talked, he said, yes, I've got some advice for you. And so I'm thinking, I wish I had a pen and pencil. This is going to be profound. And this is what he said. He said, my advice is to have your blank in the seat at least 5 seconds before the red light comes on. He was a delight. He really was.
Wow.
But he was a serious journalist, great news writer. He wrote everything that he broadcast.
Yeah. What great experiences. What a way to start. Most people start at small stations and work their way up. You started at the network.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you came back to Raleigh. Tell us, how did you get the opportunity to come back at, for that time, powerhouse radio station, WPTF?
There's only one reason. I took the audition at NBC in Washington for the summer replacement staff announcer for radio and to give station breaks. Everything was live then, everything. The station breaks, everything. And so the auditions were open. They had to post them because of the unions. And so I auditioned for summer replacement staff announcer at NBC, and much to my surprise, I won the audition.
Wow.
And so that's how I got on the air. And at the end of the summer, that job was over. I either had to go back to being a page or go someplace and get another job.
Yeah.
But once I was on the air, I wanted to stay on the air. So a friend of mine at NBC at the time saw in the broadcast magazine that a 50,000 watt radio station in North Carolina needed an announcer and was advertising for one. They didn't name the station, but I knew there were only two, WBT and WPTF.
Yeah.
And I called the number, and sure enough, it was PTF, and I came down and was interviewed by Graham Pointer and an old program director there, and got the job.
Wow, what a great story. What did you do at WPTF?
I first did what all disc jockeys do. One of the most boring things you can do is play records and give the time and give the temperature.
Okay.
But then graduated from that into doing a call-in program. They were brand new at the time, and I did a program called Ask Your Neighbor. And it was a friendly, over the backyard fence kind of thing. And Graham Pointer and I decided that the people in North Carolina were so friendly and that we need not put a delay on the program. A delay is hard for the listener because if they don't turn their radio down, they hear their voice coming back 5 seconds later, and it's very confusing. So we decided not to do that. So everything went fine for about 2 years, and then one day a lady called and said, Mr. Gaddy, it was not up to me to answer the question, it was up to the other listeners. Mr. Gaddy, I have a problem in the springtime of woodpeckers pecking up under the eaves of my house, and I wonder if anybody had something that would help me with that. And so I go on and take several other calls, punch up several other calls, and then a young male voice comes on and says, Mr. Gaddy, I'm a student over at NC State, and I've got a solution for this lady with the problem with woodpeckers. And so I'm thinking, I'm so naive, I'm thinking, isn't that nice? This student is probably studying agriculture over there and knows about these kinds of things. And I said, well, what is your solution? And this is what he said. He said, well, down in Harnett County, we take out our 12-gauge shotguns and blow their blankety-blank blanks to kingdom come. I can't fill in the blanks, as you know.
And that all went out on the air.
It went out on the air. The next day, the engineers had provided us with a nice delay.
Yeah, so to be able to cut that off. Well, that's a great story, and something very significant happened while you were at WPTF. You had I guess I would call her a raving fan. You had a very important fan in the audience that listened to you every single morning, and that was the wife of A.J. Fletcher, Margaret.
Miss Margaret. Miss Margaret listened to Ask Your Neighbor, and she said to her husband something like this, Mr. A.J., get that boy over there on WPTF to come over here and do his program. And they called me over. Fred Fletcher called me. Fred was a good friend of mine. Even though I didn't work there, he would send me little encouraging notes. When I was at PTF, he would send me little encouraging notes about enjoying something or other I did. So I went over and interviewed, and that's how I got into Channel 5.
Wow, what a great story. What did you do when you first went there? What was your first job?
My first job was to do Good Morning Charlie, which was a version of Ask Your Neighbor. it was a live telephone thing.
Oh, gosh.
And it was amazing. And then the executives of the station decided that they would use that time slot for news, and then I got into news then and went on from there.
Well, most people would have thought, gosh, they hired him to be the anchor, but they didn't. They loved your show so much on WPTF that we'll take that to television and do a version there.
Yeah.
And it was very successful. Wow, you did great. Well, interesting, and you're back in North Carolina. Let's talk about one other thing that happened very important in Washington, D.C. You met your wife. What did she do for the network?
Oh my, what a joy, even when I think about it. The first time I saw her, I was delivering inter-office mail to all the secretaries. And she was executive secretary to the director of operations.
Wow.
Which was a huge job. She did the assignments, the crew assignments for all the network broadcasts and the remotes and all those things. And so I would deliver her inter-office mail. I saw her walking down the hall the first time I saw her, and I thought, well, you know, I'd sure like to meet her. And we did meet in the commissary. She was a wonderful dancer. I loved to dance, and she loved to dance, and we had that mutual interest and got together and fell in love and got married in 1960. And then when I got the job in Raleigh, I took her away from a boss that she loved and admired, took her away from all of her friends in Washington. She grew up in Baltimore. I took her away from all that and brought her and plunked her down in Raleigh. But I couldn't drag her back now after she had North Carolina work on her for a couple of years.
Well, she's been an important part of everything that you do.
Absolutely. She understood broadcasting. She understood the scheduling. If you're in broadcasting, you either work early at the crack of dawn or before to noon, or you work from the afternoon to midnight.
Yes.
And she understood that and never had a problem with that. She understood the pressures of it. She's been a great wife for me.
Well, she's a wonderful lady, and still today continues to support you and to be your, I don't know if we would call it your voice of reason, but she's very influential in what happens, and she's a great person. Let's talk about WRAL for a moment. And let's talk about, you traveled all over the world reporting different stories and things. Talk a little bit about your experiences at RAL and some of the things that really stick out. And I know one of them is a lifelong friendship, as well as your boss with Jim Goodman.
Just let me say at the outset that with the sole exception of my parents, who were fantastic, and my wife, the person who has had the most positive influence on my career by far is Jim Goodman. He trusted me to look after the news properly. He trusted me he'd send me on assignments around the world. I really owe him everything about when you consider my career. He was a fantastic man and a man of vision. He can see 10 years down the road. I can see maybe 2 weeks. But we had the first helicopter. We had the finest equipment. We had the first satellite broadcast from overseas. We had the first of everything. And he still will grab onto something that's brand new and roll the dice. And if it works, he can say, I was the first to do it.
He's a pioneer.
He is a pioneer, no question.
Yeah, and an innovator and a great guy. And he, in our interview with him, Charlie, he speaks very highly of you, and he was so pleased to know that you were going to be here. But let's talk about some things at RAL. You worked with some great people, and let's talk about a couple of those.
Oh my. Our team at one time, we had Bob DeBartoleben, the amazing weatherman. We had Bobby Batista was my co-anchor once. Greg Fishel came along after DeBartoleben. Pam Salisbury, Adele Arakawa. I'm going to leave some of them out. But
the list goes on, yeah.
But the list goes on.
Yeah.
We had amazing people.
Of all the people that you interviewed, other than your little brush with Nikita Khrushchev, what's one that really sticks out in your mind during your days at WRAL?
I think maybe Walter Cronkite.
Tell us about that.
Cronkite is so immersed in everything around him. We had him come down here for, he was a sailor, as you know, had his own big yacht and so forth. And so he sailed up and down the North Carolina coast as he was going to Florida and back on his yacht. And he got really interested in coastal problems. And we did a documentary on the pollution of our coast. He got so interested in it, he came down. And I had a chance to sit with him and interview him. And here was the amazing thing to me about him. He's always interested in, if he came here, he would be interviewing you and interviewing the people behind the cameras and so forth. After a day that started at daylight, we flew him to the coast in our helicopter, back and forth, and he was to make a speech that night in Raleigh. And by this time, he was an older man. He had retired. And we brought him back to his hotel from the coast, and we were exhausted. And we were about to let him out at his hotel in Raleigh, and he said, well, he said, there are a few hours left here. He said, wonder if you could show me around a little bit, tell me some things about this. And it just proved to me that he was always a newsman. He always wanted to know what was going on and wanted to know about the people that he was around and wanted to know what is this and what is that. And so we had to take him on another 2 hours all around and we loved it.
What fun.
What fun it was.
Yeah.
We took him to the farmer's market, then over to all of the Research Triangle area, and he loved it.
My gosh, what a great experience. Well, that's a great story, and you've done so much at WRAL, and many people refer to you as the Walter Cronkite of North Carolina.
Let me tell you that fame is fleeting, though. A good friend of mine was talking with a younger person, and she said, when I get through with this, I'm going over to Charlie Gaddy's. I have a meeting with Charlie Gaddy. I'm going over to his house and be with him and his wife. And so the young woman said, who's Charlie Gaddy? and she said, why, he's the Walter Cronkite of North Carolina. There was a little pause. She said, who was Walter Cronkite?
That's a funny story, Charlie. Well, we are running out of time, and we have such a short period of time. You've shared some wonderful stories, but we want to tell everyone that Charlie and I sat down and did a long-form interview. And if you'd like to learn more about Charlie Gaddy and watch that long-form interview, it's available on the web at ncbroadcastlegends.com. The web address is ncbroadcastlegends.com. to see a complete interview and just so many things that we didn't get a chance to touch on today. I wish we had 2 hours or 3. You have such a rich history and so much going on. Charlie, you're still very active. You still, I don't know, do you want to say come out to play? you still do many, many great things. What's next for Charlie Gaddy?
Taking care of my Nancy.
Well,
that's what's next.
That is
and
terrific.
She's taken care of me all these years. Her health is not good. She's not down. Well, you saw her. She's lively.
She is.
She's wonderful, and I'm still healthy enough to take care of her. And I'm going to do, I always do some writing, not for publication. I just sort of put down things in a stream of consciousness that I remember. And I'm doing a thing now just called Journey. And that's just whatever comes to me about the past, some of the things we've discussed here today. I write them down for whatever.
Well, I hope we have an opportunity at some time for you to share some of that today. And we really want to thank Charlie Gaddy for being with us today and sharing these wonderful stories about so many people and your contributions here in the great state of North Carolina. Please join us again for another edition of North Carolina Broadcast Legends.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the North Carolina Broadcast Legends Production Fund, including contributions from the following: For a complete list of project funders, go to unctv.org/nclegends.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV.